Hello and welcome to that Eurovision site, Eurovision with a slice of life. I'm Angus. I use he, him pronouns professionally, and today I am joined by,
Hello, my name is Kittens, and I use she, her pronouns.
and we are here to recap and discuss ESCZ 2024, the Czech national final for Eurovision. Now, as every year for a while now, Czechia used a format where also people outside of the Czech Republic could vote, but for the first time ever, they did a live national final broadcast still on the Eurovision YouTube channel, which was then followed with a voting period that lasts for multiple days, and then by a separate result reveal. Seven songs competed. In the end, Aiko won with Pedestal, which was the first song to perform, with mostly the international vote. And second was Ellie with The Angel Share, and third was MIDI with Red Flag Parade. So first, let's just kick things off. What do you think of the winning song?
The winning song. I think it's perfectly pleasant. I would like it a lot more than I actually do, and I think staging and performance on a big stage is gonna really change how it's perceived. I'm finding it quite hard to visualize how I mean it's gonna be the same with all the performances in that tiny club. But I'm finding it quite hard to visualize how they're gonna do it, and I really hope they're gonna knock it out of the park with some great visuals and some great use of the stage, because I feel like it kind of does need it. It's a really high impact song. The lyrics are really meaningful. Um, she can clearly perform, even though I know there seem to be some problems in the club. But she's clearly a engaging performer. But yeah, I really hope they can bring it up for the actual performance in the arena.
Yeah, I would basically like to echo all of that. Musically, it is the kind of music I do gravitate towards. It reminds me of a few bands that I really like. The performance at the national final was a bit ropey, but honestly, that was true for all the performances that night. So it's very difficult to say like what was going on there and how can they like mitigate that or just not have that happen in the future. It's a solid song with solid lyrics. I like it a lot. It will end up on my playlist for Eurovision this year. At Eurovision, I mean the rock songs and the Czech Republic don't exactly have, and neither of them, let alone together, have the best track record as of late. Like Czechia has done decently, but not as well as fans usually think when they hear the songs, which worries me a little bit because they will be dependent on, because we have the public vote only semi-finals now, and Czechia got more votes from the jury consistently now for a couple of years, if I remember correctly. So
Hmm.
that is a potential issue that I could see with the song. If it does make it to the final, it should get top half. But I mean, obviously, we have barely any songs yet. Anything could still
Yeah,
help with the staging. They could still even change up the song a little. Like the studio cut is great. They could still
yep.
like do a sort of semi revamp to make it sound as good live as it did in the studio. So who knows?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do for sure. And yeah, like you say, there is a wide variety of what has happened to rock songs at Eurovision over the last few years, just generally, not just even from, certain countries. Um, so it's kind of hard to tell but to be fair, an engaging performer and an engaging performance, it doesn't really matter. If she can knock it out the park, she'll lift it out. So it
Uh,
doesn't really matter.
Definitely, and she had great energy on stage.
Mm.
Speaking of things that like stood out and just the performances, what other songs in this national final stood out to you?
So there was two that really stood out to me personally. So the first was Red Flag Parade by MIDI. And the second was Dopamine Overdose by Tom Shawn for completely different reasons, I think. MIDI, clearly seasoned performers, clearly know what they're doing. Really catchy song. The minute I heard it, it went straight onto my playlist. It hasn't left. Every time I hear it, I'm like, a good banging track. I was really happy with that. The other was Dopamine Overdose. I think the performance was a little bit lackluster. It just didn't make a lot of sense how it was staged for me. I would have loved to seen something different. But the song, despite the very corny sweet like teriyaki lyrics, I'll lean into that cringe. I don't care. I'm quite happy to just lean into that. That was cringe and beautiful. I still love the song. I love to see good dance tracks in national finals and in Eurovision. um so absolutely up my street. What about you? What came out for you?
I mean, you might be surprised to hear this, but it's the exact same two songs. It
Oh,
is.
we
I
have an
would.
agreement.
I know. I mean, it sometimes happens, but still, I would say that to be fair, live on the night, I would say Midi and Lenny were actually the best. Now, Lenny was a piano ballad that then turned into this semi-dramatic power ballad thing. But the drama was really getting sold like
Mm.
towards that latter third. That being said, I mean, I gravitate to the other two songs more, just the energy that both of them have. They really draw you in and then just drag you with them. Yeah, the dopamine overdose, just the lyrics of the entire chorus are painful to me. But despite that, the music is good enough. I'm not saying like that Tom Sean has like amazing vocals or that he does something really interesting with how he sings, but the way he can sell what he's singing is really impressive. And I think that's also a large part of that song to me. And in that sense, something similar is happening with Red Flag Parade, where I mean the chorus is a little bit silly, but
Yeah, but it's so catchy that
it's so catchy and just being sold to you like this is just the chorus and it's go along with it. I'm like, yes, I will. It's that simple. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, I would say song-wise, it was a pretty strong national final. Again, if we must look at the studio tracks, the live performances were what they were, which I
mm,
think can neatly lead us to the next question. Like, just what did you think of ESCZ 2024 in general, just the overall show?
I mean, kudos to them for putting out a essentially one episode national final in this day and age. We'd love to see that. Over and done in an hour or less. Sanremo could never. Um,
If
you
only.
know. So, there's definitely some things to be said for the format. It was kind of nice to see like a better audience there this year and have it be like out of a TV studio, but also that comes with its own challenges. The sound was a bit of a mess. You could tell they were clearly doing their best, but pretty much consistently every artist was struggling somewhere with sound. It seemed to just it possibly needed a bit of work. I'm not a sound designer. I don't know. No, I don't know any of this stuff, but it seemed a lot of people were really struggling with a lot of stuff. Um, and it that showed. I mean, overall, I like the fact that it's a one episode national final. It's one and done, and then it's just like, and you get the results in a week. I low key love how kind of cringe Adam Missick is. Um I'm I want him back every year.
Our
Just
cringe king.
he's very cringe, but I'm just not sad about seeing him there every year. And reading off an auto cue, like it's a very relatable thing. It feels like the kind of thing I would do if I was in that situation. Um yeah, I think that kind of overall they do a good job. They get it done really early in the season, which is kind of nice. There's no jamming that in there at some point on a Saturday where 17 other finals are happening. Um, you know, there's a lot to be said for it, and you can tell that it seems to be done by a small team who are just, you know, passionate about it at least. Even if the end result doesn't 100% always come out how they wanted it, that's just something to learn for next year, I guess.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. For as far as the live everything is concerned, I feel everyone just looked a bit or sound a bit underprepared, as if they're just, of course, like also doing sound checks and setups for 7 different acts, plus also Lake Malawi, plus the hood. Like that's a lot of different microphone settings and audio settings you have to contend with. That's always going to be difficult, but it did feel as if everyone was a bit underprepared. And even the artists that had some form of choreo or staging or whatever going on, they didn't practice on that stage. They practiced it like somewhere else, it sort of felt like. So it's sort of this general level of preparation that I mean, you don't necessarily need to have it. There's plenty of national finals also last season. For people who've watched the recaps before that, I noted similar issues, and so it's not a unique issue, but I do think it's something that would be great for both the artists, the broadcaster, and the viewers. If just the entire package, if people just get a bit more time and support in preparing themselves for the national final, but overall, it was a pretty good show. It's funny though. I just watched it again today. And yeah, as we're talking about it, memories of it suddenly flash back to me as if it's been years ago and it was a marathon of 15 things. Because Caesar Samson did interviews, Austria 2015, was it? Something like that.
Yep, yep, which
And
is definitely a bizarre
I know he's
choice.
part of the Czech delegation, something along those lines, but still felt strange. Also, it was very funny to me to, even though he was talking English, you could hear the German media training and just a German presenting style just jump out, which was very amusing to me, if confusing at the same time. Yeah, that was a choice, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was definitely a choice. I mean, it was nice to have the little interviews and all that kind of stuff. It gave you a bit of a flavor of the artists and who they were and their weird little anecdotes. But also it did seem a little odd, but I, again, I've seen weirder. This is not by far not the oddest thing.
It's definitely not the oldest thing. It's not the oldest Eurovision thing we've seen this season, but
No.
it's just somehow in the context of ESCZ, it feels very strange. Also with sort of the subtitles cutting in and cutting out depending on when they wanted to, as if they're sort of trying to go for a Czech audience, but also not because obviously international people can vote in this one.
Yeah, it definitely seemed more geared towards the international audience. Obviously, the whole thing's in English, which is interesting, and obviously the voting as well, the international audience getting a bigger sway on the voting than the locals seemed like I still don't understand, but
Yeah, I'm
it
not.
is what it
Yeah,
is.
it is. I get the rationale behind it. It's similar to having international jury. You want to appeal to as many people as possible so you can do well in Eurovision. Although on the other hand, you're only getting to get dedicated Eurovision fan votes anyway, who are a very small and very distinct subset of people who actually vote at Eurovision itself. So will this even get you more televotes in the end? Who's to say?
I just feel like it might be quite gutting if you live in the country and it's your selection and your votes are worth less.
Yeah, especially if you then also look at just the discrepancy in the vote numbers this year around, where it was this massive gap between both the finishing position and the amount of votes between the
Mm.
artists. So that's and I can imagine that that must feel pretty gutting for the fans. Another strange thing was Vesna wasn't there, but Lake Malawi were.
Yeah,
I know Vesna were touring, but I didn't think they had dates at that moment. So I was like, okay, are they going to be at the results show? No.
it definitely. I mean, it was nice to see like Malawi and We Are Domi back, sure. And nice to have that little Easter egg of the staging that would have been in the We Are Domi performance. But I was baffled to see no Vesna. That was
It's yeah, I would say this feels very much as a we're putting on our first proper national final, because we shouldn't forget, even last year, well, last year was the first time that they did proper performances. Before that, it was just like, oh, people recorded music videos and we just put them online and you vote for them. And that was sort of like a format that evolved over the years. I believe it started in 2016 or something like that, like as soon as they returned, basically.
mm.
So always been slightly, or maybe a bit late, but it's always been sort of this form. It's evolving. This, like, I think really the first massive step in this actually a live aspect to it that's also getting a live broadcast. And for that, I have to commend them. Like, they did a good job for something like that.
I mean, you can definitely see them as a country, as a delegation, like making steps forward and moving and changing. And, in most cases, that's what we want from countries to learn and adjust and, see what happened last time and see what worked. And then to go, okay, actually, we're going to push it and make it slightly different next year.
Yeah.
So, kudos to them for learning and trying.
And they kept the big stuff that worked, which is also just, despite only having 7 songs, a proper diversity in the kind of music that you're getting. I miss, having a song in Czech, even though that was basically only last year and otherwise basically doesn't happen. But you take what you can get. At least the genre diversity was there. And there were also, I think, strong songs overall. I think all of them would have been a good representative to have at Eurovision, even if some songs would do better than others.
Yeah, I don't think there was any song there that I would have sat there and gone, this is just awful. Um, and I know I'm generally very neutral with songs. I either like them or I don't like them as much, but they're fine, kind of thing. There's only a few songs that I'm just like, yeah, I hate it. But equally, I felt like this was a pretty solid lineup that you could have sent any one of them and you'd have been like, yeah, pretty
Makes
good.
sense. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it for ESCZ, a short discussion for a short national final. Well, Jessica Televisa, thank you for putting this on. I hope you keep evolving the format. I hope you keep experimenting. I hope you keep selecting diverse songs. Please more in Czech. And just keep on trying, keep on going. We're very
You're
happy to
on
have
the
you in the
right you're on
Eurovision
the
final.
right track. Just keep
Exactly.
going.
Just
Keep
keep going.
going. You learn from the mistakes. Keep going. You're getting there. We appreciate you.
You're doing great, sweetie. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening. Thank you, kids, for joining me. This was That Eurovision Site. You can follow us over on at That Eurosite over on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, TikTok. I think that's all of them. I believe a version of this will also go up on the podcast. So that's and you can follow that at That Euro Podcast over on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads as well, I believe.
I think so.
So, oh, we're also That Euro Site over on Tumblr. I knew I forgot an important one. So yeah, thank you so much for listening again, kittens. Thank you for joining me,
Thank
and
you.
goodbye.